Wait a minute. Was this man killed because of masturbation? There's a story in the Bible where people have kind of misunderstood what's happening, and they might try to kind of extrapolate what they thought happened there onto what could happen potentially to someone who they think is doing the same thing, even though what they think the person is doing isn't what was done in the Bible. That makes sense? Hope I'm not confusing you, but I want to go to this story of Onan in the Bible. He does something, God kills him for it, and some people are a bit confused as to why. And so sometimes when you're confused, what happens? People tend to kind of guess and sometimes even make things up. So let's go to the text. This is Genesis 38:4. You know what? Let's go back. Let's start in verse 2. Judah saw there a daughter of a certain Canaanite whose name was Shua, and he took her and went into her. So she conceived and bore a son and named him Er. Then she conceived again and bore a son and named him Onan. This is who the story is about. She bore still another son and named him Shelah, and it was Chezib that she bore him. Now Judah took a wife for Er, his firstborn. Now remember, this is Judah, who is a son of Israel. He is one of Jacob's son. He is actually the person whom the line of Jesus comes through. Remember, the Bible tells us in Genesis later on that the scepter shall not depart Judah. This is who we're speaking of, Judah the father. Now Judah took a wife for Er his son, and her name was Tamar. But Er, Judah's firstborn, was evil in the sight of the Lord. So the Lord took his life. So the Lord took Er, which is his prerogative. Why? Because he's God. He could do that. Then verse 8, Judah said to Onan, "Go into your brother's wife and perform your duty as a brother-in-law to her and raise up offspring for your brother." Well, that doesn't seem right to us. That seems a little bit weird, maybe icky, because that's just not our custom. We're going to see where this comes from in a little bit. But notice what Onan does. Onan knew that the offspring would not be his. That's important. So when he went into his brother's wife, he wasted his seed on the ground in order not to give offspring to his brother. Now, this issue here is where some people misunderstand what's happening. They think that maybe he has done something that he should not have. This is where this question of, is masturbation a sin? And some people think that this is what's happened here. This is not what's happening here. He just simply did not complete the act with her. That's all. And so, and by the way, this is not even given some sort of, because this is not what's mentioned here, nor do we have an example of it in the Bible. Is that to say that it's okay to do so, that it's not a sin? No, it's not okay to do so, and it is sinful because in order to do so, and I know someone's going to have a response back, but in order to do so, you have to lust after someone that's got it. Or I guess you don't have to. I guess you don't have to. And I don't want to get too much down this particular road. Someone's going to send something back, well, Corey, you don't have to this, or you don't have to that. But that particular act would be something that God is not wanting us to do. But now let's go back to the text, though, because I want to show you what the issue is, and then why God actually did kill Onan and what was his sin, because he did sin. If not, and I'm trying to be safe here, but if not finishing the task is a sin, which, by the way, it's not a sin. If it were a sin, well, then that's why he was killed. But that's not why he was killed, because that's not a sin. He was killed, or to say, put it this way, it's also not a sin to do what he did. Well, then, Corey, why was he killed? Well, let's get to it. But what he did was displeasing in the sight of the Lord. So he took his life. But does the Bible tell us why it was displeasing in the sight of the Lord? Well, before we make up anything, let's just read some more. Then Judah said to his daughter-in-law Tamar, "Remain a widow in your father's house until my son Shelah grows up, for he thought that I am afraid that he too may die like his brother." So Tamar went and lived in her father's house. Now, God has taken the life of Onan. Why? And remember, the next son is up in line to fulfill the duty, that is to provide an heir for the first son, even though this particular son, the first one, did evil in the Lord's sight. Remember, the Bible said that he was evil in the sight of the Lord, so the Lord took him. Well, why do you have to perpetuate his line? Well, there's a reason for that. Let's go to Deuteronomy 25:5. He says, when brothers live together and one of them dies and has no son, the wife of the deceased shall not be married outside the family to a strange man. Her husband's brother shall go into her and take her to himself as a wife and perform the duty of a husband's brother to her. It shall be that the firstborn whom she bears shall assume the name of his dead brother, not the brother who has actually fathered the child, but the brother who has passed away, so that his name will not be blotted out from Israel. In other words, you want to leave a posterity, you want to leave a descendant line from yourself. That's the goal of these people. And of course, we're the same way. We want to have children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren after us, even long after we're gone. And so that's the point. Now, verse 7. But if the man does not desire to take his brother's wife, then his brother's wife shall go up to the gate to the elders and say, my husband's brothers refuses to establish a name for his brother in Israel. He is not willing to perform the duty of a husband's brother to me. Then the elders of his city shall summon him and speak to him. And if he persists and says, I do not desire to take her, then his brother's wife shall come to him in the sight of the elders and pull his sandal off his foot and spit in his face. And she shall declare, thus it is done to the man who does not build up his brother's house. In Israel, his name shall be called the house of him whose sandal was removed. And so he has a duty to perform, but if he doesn't wish to, then there is a bit of a punishment for this. Now we see this, what we call this kinsman redeemer. We see this show up in Ruth. Remember, Ruth is to be married off to someone in the family. And so in Ruth 3:9, he said, who are you? And she answered, I am Ruth, your maid. So spread your covering over your maid, for you are a close relative. Then he said, may you be blessed by the Lord, or of the Lord, my daughter. You have shown your last kindness to be better than the first by not going after young men, whether poor or rich. Now, my daughter, do not fear. I will do for you whatever you ask. For all my people in the city know that you are a woman of excellence. Now it is true, I am a close relative. Look what he says. However, there is a relative closer than I am. Remain this night, and in the morning comes, if he will redeem you, good, let him redeem you. But if not, if he does not wish to redeem you, then I will redeem you as the Lord lives. And so what he's speaking of is offering her a line or redeem her. This is where we get this whole notion of a kinsman redeemer, but the closer relative will also be the one. And so this is kind of similar to what's happening with Onan. But going back to Onan, why was God displeased with Onan? Onan did not want to have the child that would not be his. So why was it displeasing? Well, here's his sin. Let's go over to Leviticus 18 and 20. In Leviticus 18, let's start in verse 16 here. And then notice what it says. You shall not uncover the nakedness of your brother's wife. It is your brother's nakedness. Chapter 20, verse 21. If there is a man who takes his brother's wife, it is abhorrent. He has uncovered his brother's nakedness. They will be childless. So there is a rule that also coincides with this. You are not to be with your brother's wife just for the sake of being with your brother's wife. Well, what did Onan do? Onan decided to just be with his brother's wife for the sake of it. Notice what he says. Then verse 9. Onan knew that the offspring would not be his own. So when he went to his brother's wife, he wasted his seed on the ground in order not to give an offspring to his brother. Well, what's the problem? The problem is you are now just sleeping with her just to be with her. If you did not want to do this, if you did not want to have or redeem your brother's wife like you're supposed to, well, then you follow through with what God requires, but you can't just sleep with her just to be with her just because. That is the problem. And so because of that, because he violated the sin, not because he didn't redeem the child or redeem the line for his brother, there's a provision for him not to do so if he so chooses. But now he would be marked for that. He would be viewed in a negative light because of that, but you wouldn't die for that. But because you decided to go ahead and to sleep with her, there is the issue. Now, the interesting thing, after all of this that was going on, this reads like a soap opera. Better than any soap opera that you can see. But the interesting thing about all of this is that, remember, the Bible says that the scepter shall not depart Judah. And so who comes through Judah? Well, Jesus's lineage is through Judah. And so as Judah, who is withholding his son from Tamar, is tricked by Tamar, and then Judah ends up thinking that he's sleeping with a prostitute, ends up sleeping with Tamar, and so she, in essence, becomes redeemed by Judah, and Judah realizes his sin, and they have a son named Perez. Well, what's interesting about that? Well, if we go to Matthew chapter 1, verse 2, Abraham was the father of Isaac, Isaac the father of Jacob, Jacob the father of Judah, and his brother Judah was the father of Perez and Zerah by Tamar. And as we drop down further, we find out that this is the line that goes through Ruth and Boaz and David, and ultimately the genealogy of Jesus is through them. And so the interesting part is that God is trying to develop a posterity from this different line, but even if it weren't because of it's Jacob and his children, even still the rule is the same, and you cannot do what Onan did, was just to get kind of a free chance at sleeping with this woman. No, there were rules against that, and because of that, because of his deceptiveness and the sin, God took his life, not for spilling his seed on the ground, not for masturbating, not for any of those things, but for that, for disobeying God. So I hope this helps. Hope this encourages you even to go more into the scriptures, look more and more. There are a bunch of interesting stories like this where some of these questions that come up, we can easily answer by just going to the text and see what the text says. Amen.